Leah here from leahfirstsci.com/MCAT, and in this video, we'll start a discussion on translational motion with a quick introduction to dimensions, vectors, and the concept of kinematics. And before you think, oh, this is too simple, let me jump ahead to the rest of the videos, take a moment, listen to what I have to say, and make a promise to yourself that you'll follow what I tell you to do. You see, the concept of dimensions, vectors, and kinematics, even though they tend to be more simple compared to the other MCAT topics, even though they tend to be simpler, these will serve as a foundation to how you study and everything that you learn. So don't just learn this information, make sure that you really understand what's going on, you're solid with the equations, and most of all, you know how to derive equation to equation and unit to unit. Because later on you'll find yourself looking at formulas that have units equaling the kinematics. For example, you'll see force, you'll see motion, you'll see distance, and you have to know how to go back and forth between them quickly. You can find this entire series on my website at leahfirstsci.com/MCAT Physics. In working with MCAT tutoring clients, I often get the question on dimensions, so I want to make sure you're clear. When we're talking about dimensions, for the MCAT, we're only looking at one dimension or two dimension. If I have an object moving in a straight line, for example, in the x direction, or in the y direction, this object is said to be moving in just one dimension. It's not that x is 1 and y is 2. X is one dimension, y is one dimension when they're independent of each other. However, if I have an object moving in a direction that crosses both the x and y components, as we can see with this vector, we have a component in the x direction. Here we have another component in the y direction. This object is said to be moving in two directions. If I had an object moving in both the x, y, and z direction, for example, the object here, in addition to going slightly upwards, it's also coming out of the page or into the page, that is said to be moving in three dimensions. But on the MCAT, you only have to know calculations for 1 and 2 dimensions, so we won't focus on the concept of the z dimension. The traditional way to set this up is positive x horizontal to the right, negative x horizontal to the left, positive y goes up, negative y goes down. But you don't have to stick with this. You can take these dimensions, rotate them, and relabel any way you want as long as you're consistent. In fact, you've probably seen a problem where your x and y components are not as expected. If you have an object on an inclined plane, you've probably learned to set it up so that the downward direction is negative x, the upward direction is positive x, and then the positive y is perpendicular to the object up, negative y is perpendicular to the object down. We'll discuss this in more detail when we're talking about objects on an inclined plane. But for now, just recognize that as long as you have your x and y perpendicular to each other and you're in two dimensions, you're good to go. Another important concept to know for this topic is the difference between a vector and a scalar. If you look in the dictionary, you'll see that a vector is something that has a magnitude and a direction, and scalar is something that has a magnitude. But now let's explain it in simple terms so that it makes sense and you can apply it to questions. A vector has a magnitude, which is simply a size, but it also tells you which direction that thing is going. A scalar only has size, but it does not give you a direction. These can represent the same thing, but the way you say it or write it will make a big difference. So for example, if I tell you that I went for a walk today and I walked 3 miles, great, I walked 3 miles in what direction? So 3 miles is the size, it's the magnitude, but I have no idea of the direction, and therefore it is only a scalar. If I tell you that I walked for 3 miles in a northwest direction, I have a magnitude, which is 3 miles, I have a direction, northwest, and that makes it a vector. On the MCAT, you'll be given a lot of numbers that are inherently vectors, but they may appear to be a scalar, so you can treat them the same way in larger problems. For example, if you're calculating velocity, acceleration, motion in general, just recognize that the concept exists, but we're focusing just on the math and the bigger picture calculations. Now that we have the basics, visit my website, leahfirstsci.com/MCAT Physics, scroll down to the series on translational motion, and that's where we'll continue with vectors and how to find their components, how to add vectors, and then we'll go into the kinematics equations, velocity, acceleration, and free fall. This topic also requires a basic knowledge of how to do math shortcuts because there will be a lot of calculations. You'll also have to be very confident with your trigonometry and sine cosine values. If you're not fully confident with this, go back to my MCAT Math series, which you can find at layforSci.com/MCATMath. Jump to the trigonometry video, and I show you the tricks and shortcuts for quickly coming up with solutions, so your time and energy can be invested in finding the answer rather than wasting time on tricky math. Are you stuck on a specific MCAT topic? I offer private online tutoring where I focus on your needs to strengthen your individual weaknesses. Tutoring details can be found using the link below or by visiting my website, layforSci.com/MCATtutor. Are you overwhelmed by the sheer volume of information required for the MCAT? Are you worried that lack of a proper study plan and low MCAT score will prevent you from getting into medical school? My new ebook, The MCAT Exam Strategy, a 6-week guide to crushing the MCAT, will help you formulate a concrete study plan by helping you figure out where you stand now, identify your goals, and figure out what it takes to reach them. And it's yours free when you sign up for my email newsletter at MCATexamstrategy.com. By signing up for my email newsletter, you'll also be the first to know when I have new videos, MCAT study guides, cheat sheets, tips, and so much more. The link again, MCATexamstrategy.com.